Hello and welcome. So, first things first, Cappy's in the shower, which is the wall right behind this one, and she's playing Taylor Swift, so I'm really hoping that does not pick up. You're rude. I'm really hoping that does not pick up on camera. So, like any animal that is bred for the color mutations they have, rats can come with problems depending on certain color and fur types. So if you've been around in the rat community for a while, you know rats come in all sorts of color and coat types. And like any animal that is bred specifically for color coat mutations, some of them do come with problems genetically linked to those mutations. So I figured today we would just talk about that a little bit. So let's go ahead and get into it while my cat decides if she's going to be a menace or not. So first things first, rats do not have enough genetic difference between the varieties for them to be considered breeds, which is why we call them varieties and not breeds. And secondly, the second disclaimer of this video is going to be that I am not telling you what to do. I'm not telling you what rats you can and cannot adopt or purchase. I'm not telling you how to go about your rat care journey. So in the US, a lot of breeders, I've never personally come across a breeder that didn't breed at least one of the varieties that is on this list. And in the UK, they'd be considered a bad or backyard breeder for breeding this. Here in the US, it's a little bit more complicated. You just kind of have to decide what you can and can't live with and go forward with that. I have never, as I said, I've never come across a breeder that didn't breed at least one of these varieties. There's a bit of debate because there are certain issues that crop up in rat lines with new varieties that can be bred out and some that cannot be bred out. So it's a bit of a debate because if you can breed it out, is it a problem to continue breeding them until you get to that point? It's up to you to decide, honestly. And again, like I said, in the UK, if there's a lot of problems linked to a variety, they won't breed it until those problems have been worked out by other breeders from other countries or by big name breeders within the UK. So if it's found that it cannot be completely removed from the line, then they won't breed it at all. So what's disclaimers out of the way? Let's get into the list. So first up, we have Harley. So Harley is a type of rat that it has long fur, and a lot of times they don't have an undercoat, so they have long wispy fur. Now this type of coat can be connected with other types, so like you will see Harvel a lot, which is Harley velveteen, and they tend to have a lot plusher of a coat than just a normal Harley. Some Harleys look like double Rexes because they're very close to being bald, but typically the Harley you think of has a long coat. A lot of times those are baby Harleys and the coat gets thinner as they age, but it's a long-coated variety. The issues related to Harley are skin issues. So Harleys tend to have a protein sensitivity, so that if they have more protein, the weather girls, Sunny and Cloud are both in their space pod, and they're just like, it's so cute. Their faces are pointed right at me. Harleys tend to have protein issues, so if they have more protein, the worse their skin is going to get. And they'll become very itchy and scabby, and they'll open wounds on themselves constantly because they're just so uncomfortable and itchy. And it can get to a point where the only kind thing is euthanasia. Now, you can counterbalance that with proper diet if they're from an okay Harley line. The worst ones, there's not much you can do. And then there's some really good Harley lines that don't seem to have any issues at all. But it hasn't been successfully bred out of the variety yet. And then currently it's looking like it won't be. So you just kind of have to try and manage it when you have a Harley and hope for the best. Next we have Manx rats. So if you know Manx cats, you know what a Manx rat is, which is a rat with no tail. They are born with no tail. Sometimes they have a stub tail as well, but to my understanding, that is considered a poor Manx. I consider any Manx a poor rat, personally. I do not like tailless rats. Rats are meant to have tails. But yeah, it's not just that they don't have a tail, they tend to have a rounder rump as well to compensate for the lack of tail, because the spine ends a lot sooner, because this tail is part of the spine. So that is also part of the problems it creates. So because the tail is part of the spine, they use it to balance, they also use it to regulate their temperature. A Manx rat cannot do that, and because their spine is so much shorter, it can cause back problems. Beyond that, Manx rats are often born deformed with issues with their pelvis either being fused or not connected to their legs. And this often will result in euthanasia because it's just very uncomfortable for the rat and there's nothing they can do. They also often have bladder or bowel issues where they just cannot control their bladder or bowel. And to top it off, they often get bladder stones. So lots of issues with Manx rats. Next up we have marble rats or spotted tabby. Both names mean the same thing. Marble rats, like their name suggests, like you think of like a slab of marble, they're gray rats that have splotches of darker color on them. From what I've seen, the babies I've seen turn out like really charcoal gray with like a different color undercoat, and as they age, the spots appear. So the thing with marble rats is that they often have something called malcollusion, which is where their teeth come in crooked or deformed, and you have to get them trimmed. Now, on the lightest of cases, hi Harvey. On the lightest of cases, you can just get them trimmed every 2-ish weeks, but on the worst cases, the teeth will not grow in correctly, and trimming does not help, and the rat cannot eat. In which case, you do have to end up euthanizing them. And typically with marbles, if they get teeth problems, it is going to get to that point. Every breeder I've ever talked to about them has basically said that if they get teeth problems, that's pretty much it. The breeder, in fact, that I got the bugs from breeds marble. As I said, every breeder in the US breeds something that is on this list. But she breeds marble, and my friend was curious about marbles, so she talked to her, and the breeder said that none of her rats that she had bred from had the teeth issues, but ones that she had honed out did. So, my cat was gonna go for my foot. So in that, you have a breeder that is only selecting like the highest quality of marbles, but the issues are still within the lines because it is an issue linked to the variety. Next up we have high white or dominant white spotted, DWS if you prefer. And this is a variety that's very misnamed. So high white does not necessarily mean they are mostly white rat. So they have like blazes or white stomachs or I think white sides, like that kind of thing. They can be black rats, they can be brown rats, they can be any color. It's just a misnamed variety. And the issue with high white is that they get something called megacolon. So megacolon is a genetic condition that usually presents in young rats, like typically 4 to 10 weeks old. So typically before they would be homed out to a rat owner. It is a condition where the nerves in the colon just do not work properly, and so makes it difficult for the rat to defecate, and often results in the colon swelling up, hence the name megacolon. And the only solution to this, like there's some minor cases that can be like managed, but typically almost all cases result in euthanasia because it is very uncomfortable for the rat, and there is no cure for it. Typically, this is something that is found in babies before they are homed out. There can be late stage cases, but like the latest being like 10 months, but it is highly unlikely that would happen. So if you ended up with a high white or DWS, chances are they will be okay, but it is still something that is caused by this gene and does result in some very sad situations. In the same vein, there's black-eyed white. So black-eyed white is also linked to high white. They come with a different variety of problems. They can also have the megacolon problem if they are linked to a high white line, but black-eyed white is more than just a white rat with black eyes. They come from lines that have color within them, typically very light color, and then the breeder will just breed all that out, and they'll typically not have an entire litter of black-eyed whites. They'll have like 1 or 2. And black-eyed whites, again, can come from a high white line, but the other issues that they can get are deafness and epilepsy, which means seizures. So deafness isn't really a factor. Like Orville, who's somewhere in here, she's deaf and it doesn't affect her at all. The epilepsy, however, can be quite severe, and it can be very difficult to manage in rats, especially if you don't have a rat savvy vet. A lot of times vets assume any form of seizure will be caused either by a head injury or a brain tumor. So you would need a very highly qualified vet in order to manage epilepsy in a rat. And even then, you might not be able to manage it. It's just kind of a go with the flow, do your best kind of situation. And finally, we have the king variety of health problems, which is hairless rat. So with pretty much any animal that is not meant to be hairless rats have a wide variety of issues related to the gene. So a true hairless is a rat that doesn't have any fur or eyelashes or whiskers. And then you have variations on that, because technically double rexes are considered a type of hairless to some people, but double rexes can be quite furry or quite nude. There's a wide range in that. But true hairless have a lot of issues. Starting with skin issues. Their skin is very vulnerable and sensitive because there's nothing protecting it, so they do get scratched and cut up a lot, which can lead to a lot of infections. They also tend to get skin cancer a lot more often, at least from the rescues I follow. It's bad. They also get eye issues because they don't have eyelashes to protect them, or alternatively, they can get a condition where they do have eyelashes, but they grow inward. This can happen with pigs as well a lot. It can happen with any animal, but with pigs it can happen a lot as well. And basically, you have to go and flip the eyelid in outward surgically, or have the eye removed depending on how much damage it caused. They also have a lot of lactation issues, so it's not uncommon at all for a breeder to breed a female and then the female is incapable of taking care of her young, so because she just cannot lactate. And if you do not have another lactating doe, then there's not much you can do to save the babies. You can try to hand rear them, but that's incredibly hard, especially if you don't have any experience doing so, and they're very delicate little animals. And to top it off, hairless rats are also more prone to respiratory diseases, bacterial diseases, liver diseases, and kidney diseases. They are a very weak variety. I personally do like hairless rats. I think they're cute. I've never had one, and if I did have one, it would be through a rescue situation. But they do come with a huge backlist of problems that you have to be aware of. And finally, my next rat that I'm going to mention is more of an honorable mention, because certain breeders have managed to breed out these issues in their lines, but not all of them have. And that rat is silvermane. So I have a lot of silvermane rats. Cappy's had 2, and I have had, there's Sailor, who's passed now. I have 2 in this cage. Both the dwarves are, and then both Suitor and Fitz are. So I've had a lot of silvermanes. So when they were first discovered, they were discovered in a pet store, feeding stock, which is often how these varieties are discovered. It's either labs or feeding stock. And the rat, one of the rats that was silvermane was perfectly sweet and happy, and the other one was very, very, very aggressive. And that carried out through the silvermane lines as they try to breed it out. And the other issue they have is seizures. Now, most silvermane lines have managed to breed this out. However, in my experience, I have noticed the aggression issue is not completely gone. So in the UK, that's separate. In the UK, they seem like normal rats, like completely fine, no worse or better than any other rat. In the US, not so much. So of my silvermanes, Sailor was the most aggressive rat I've ever had. And then the Weather Girls, their father was actually silvermane, and all 3 of them had aggression issues. And Grant, Cappy's rat, was also a spicy girl for a long time, to the point where I couldn't reach into her space pod because she would bite me. And then to top that off, the other 2 girls I got with Sailor, her 2 sisters from the same litter. Riff Raff was fine, but Heidi had seizures for the last year of her life. She was on medication for it, and it was handled well, but she did have seizures very frequently. And I've noticed other, specifically US people, do get those same issues with their silvermane still. So the better the breeder you can get, the more likely that these issues won't be in their lines, because like I said, I've had a lot of silvermanes. So all the silvermanes I've had an issue with from the one breeder that Cappy and I both got ours from, they were her black silvermane line, but we have 3 from her blue silvermane line, or have had 3. Spectre is no longer with us. And they did not have an issue. And then Fitz is fine, and Suitor seems fine. However, Lamb might have had a Silvermane parent at some point. I don't know for sure. And she had aggression issues. And the three Weather Girls all had aggression issues, and their father was Silvermane. Now, the three Weather Girls came from an unfortunate situation where someone decided they were going to breed rats and then realized they couldn't take care of them, and they got rehomed to me. And Lamb came from a good breeder, but, you know, aggression pops up whether it's from a good breeder or not. But yeah, just keep that in mind. Sometimes Silvermanes still have the issues that have supposedly been bred out of their lines. Just keep that in mind. Okay. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you know what to do. All the fun stuff down below. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye!